Whether it's your first time or your 100th time, traveling solo can be very intimidating. I am feeling those nerves today as I get ready to head to a part of the world that I have never been to before. But after visiting 15 countries by myself, I do have a routine down of what to do to stay safe and even to reduce any anxiety I feel before a trip. Today I want to share these solo travel tips with you so that you too can stay safe and have fun on your own solo trip. Today I'm heading to Guatemala by myself, but before we get into that, I wanted to give you my first recommendation for solo travel. If this is your first solo trip, I recommend that you pick a region or a place that you are more familiar with. This will help ease a lot of nerves. When I started my very first backpacking trip, I flew to Europe before going to Southeast Asia because I had already been to several countries in Europe and I felt more comfortable there. Now, I'm not saying that you have to start somewhere you've already been. I'm not telling you to do anything, but if you are nervous about visiting a new region or a new part of the world, this is something to consider. You could also start preparing at home by going and doing things by yourself. Things like going to the movies, going out to eat, going for a hike, and just going and exploring your own city alone can help you feel more prepared when you do get on that plane all by yourself. But remember, it is normal to feel nervous. I am traveling by myself tonight, and I also feel nervous, even though I have been to at least 15 countries by myself now. This is because I'm going to a new region of the world that I've never been to, Central America. Central America also has a bit of a negative reputation, as does the country of Guatemala that I am flying to tonight. Anytime I go somewhere new that has a bad reputation, I tend to feel a bit nervous. So here is what I am doing to make myself feel better and less nervous and to have a safe and fun trip. Before I even leave on my trip, there is a lot of research that I do and a lot of other things that I do to make sure that I am safe while I start traveling. The first thing I always do is I just check to make sure that I am sharing my location with both Jan and with my sister. They both check in on me, especially my sister, to make sure I am safe, so I like that somebody knows where I am. Going along with this is not something that I do before I leave, but while I'm traveling, I am constantly texting Jan. We pretty much text 24/7 as long as we're both awake in the country, so he would notice if I didn't check in and I just kind of stopped texting him. But as a general rule, you should let somebody know every morning kind of your plans for the day. That way they know where you are, where you're going, and also tell somebody at your hostel or at your hotel so somebody always knows where to go looking for you in case you didn't check back in. It's also important for me that I know exactly where to go. So I like to screenshot the address of my accommodation. That way I can give it to a taxi driver or whoever may need it. And I'll also write it down on paper just in case something were to happen to my phone. This brings me to my next point, which is to have your first night's accommodation booked. It just makes me feel a lot more comfortable knowing exactly where I'm going to go as soon as I land. That's the scariest part for me, is arriving in a new place and figuring out how I'm going to get to my hotel. I also scheduled a flight that arrives in Guatemala in the morning. I always avoid arriving at night no matter the destination because more crime happens at night, and I just feel a lot safer arriving in the daylight and having plenty of time to get to my accommodation. Another tip is to know how you're going to get data. If it's your first time traveling solo, it's going to make you feel more comfortable to have data on your phone. And there are two ways that people do this. The first way is the traditional way. They will arrive in a new country, then go buy a data plan. The other way, and the one that I prefer to use, is an eSIM. If you are unfamiliar with eSIMs, they are electronic SIM cards. The way they work is you download an app, select the country you are going to, then bam, you have data. My favorite part is that you could purchase data before you even board the plane. This means that you will have data the second you arrive in your destination. The app that I use is called Hola Fly because they are the #1 rated eSIM program in the world, so you know you can trust them. If you are interested in purchasing data through them, you could even get 5% off by using my discount code. Before I fly anywhere, I also look up common scams in that country and in that region because this helps me be more aware when something happens. I also refresh on common scams worldwide. This just helps me, I think, be more aware and I know what to look for with these common scams. I also read up on safety in that country and look at areas that I should avoid that aren't necessarily safe for tourists. This just helps me exercise more caution while traveling. If I'm traveling internationally, which I am tonight, I also register with the US Embassy. This lets them know that I am in that country and they will notify me if anything changes within that country. I felt that it was extra important for me to register while in Guatemala because they have a lot of volcanoes and a lot of earthquakes. So if a natural disaster were to happen, I want the US Embassy to know that I'm in that country. You also want to know exactly how you're getting to your accommodation. For me personally, the scariest part is always arriving in a new place. It makes me nervous at the start of every single trip. In this case, I pre-arranged transportation with my hostel. This is always more expensive than figuring out for yourself or just taking a bus. For me, it's usually worth it though. It just makes me feel more comfortable knowing I will safely get to my accommodation. So if you are nervous about this part as well, I give you permission to take the more expensive route. The most important part about traveling solo is making sure that you feel comfortable. Regardless of how you get to your accommodation, always track where you are going using Google Maps or whatever GPS system you use. You can make sure you are going the right way and call the police if you are not. Another thing that I always do when I arrive in a new place is I always book a hostel. This helps me make friends and feel comfortable when I first arrive. I also like to get tips from people, tips about just general information in the country, where to go, best places to eat, and then I have people to go out and explore with so I'm not on my own in the very beginning. I recommend hostels for all solo travelers because it is a great way to make new friends and really just feel like you're not alone. Although I have traveled solo many times, I still start in hostels, as I mentioned earlier, because it just helps me feel more comfortable in the environment when I first arrive. I get a lot of questions about safety regarding hanging out with people that I don't know. To stay safe with people I just met, I follow a few simple rules. Number one is I try to go out with a group, so I try to hang out with more than just one person. This is usually pretty easy to do in hostels. I also don't go anywhere at night. Not by myself, not with others. I avoid night altogether. This isn't just for Guatemala, it's for everywhere in the world. When hanging out with friends from hostels, I also stick to public places. Travelers usually want to go sightseeing and walking around the city anyway. I avoid going out for alcoholic beverages with people I don't know. Actually, I don't party while I travel. I may go hang out with friends, but I never have more than one beer. Additionally, I always lock up my valuables. Even if I have become best friends with everyone in the hostel and I trust them, I still keep my electronics and documents locked up. Even though I feel like I could trust them, I still remember that I don't really know them. Additionally, they may bring others into the room who you don't know. Although I take safety precautions, meeting people is one of my favorite aspects of travel. I love making new friends and sharing incredible experiences with them. This is one of the reasons I love solo travel so much. While you stay in hostels and travel solo, take safety precautions, but don't let fear stop you from connecting with people. Sorry, I hope the street isn't too loud right here. But another thing that I always do when I travel is I never walk around with my camera first. The first time I go out, I walk around without any electronics and I just get a feel for the town or the city. I see if there's any areas I feel uncomfortable in. I see if there's any areas I would feel comfortable with my camera out. In this case, yes, I feel comfortable with my camera out here in Antigua, so now it is out. But even then, I never leave it out at all times. I take it out when I need it to film like this, and then I put it immediately back in my backpack so I don't just constantly have a camera around my neck. Now, if you don't travel with your camera, you don't have to worry so much about that, but this really goes for all electronics, even things like AirPods, having your phone out, just anything that looks expensive. And when I do walk around and I get to feel if I really don't feel safe, I just won't bring my camera out, and that is even for my YouTube videos, for everything. One time I was actually filming this exact video but in a different country, and I walked around without my camera and I felt extremely unsafe. I was actually followed because I had my phone out. And then I just ended the video and I never finished it, which is why I'm now making it here in Antigua. Safety always comes before pictures, before videos, and it's not worth it to put myself or yourself in danger just to get a picture or a video. As a budget traveler, I try to avoid excursions because they are always more expensive than going on your own. However, there are times I just feel more comfortable doing an excursion than trying to figure things out by myself. This is especially true during the beginning of a trip. I typically start out with a guide, then as the trip goes on and I feel more comfortable, I start going on my own to save money. In Guatemala, it is recommended to only do excursions though because of crime that can occur. Most excursions are treks though, which require guides anyway. Even if they weren't required, I would still probably book the excursion anyway. Although it is more expensive, once again, it's important to know that you feel comfortable. On this trip, I only did guided excursions just because they were usually required, but normally I do a mix of both guided excursions and figuring out on my own. Just because you hear other backpackers tell you to do it on your own doesn't mean you should. If you feel comfortable, then by all means go for it. It will save you money. But if you feel more comfortable with a guide, then that's great too. Do whatever feels right for you. Another really important rule that I have that I already touched on a little bit is that I always get back to my accommodation before dark. Crime usually happens at night, so I just avoid the night altogether. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but even on the rare occasions I do go out at night, I never drink. When you're drunk, you lose control and you're not as aware of your surroundings. Therefore, it's more likely that something bad can happen. There are literally scammers who hang out in bars just to take advantage of drunk tourists. But even something as simple as falling down and getting hurt is more likely to happen when you're intoxicated. I've met people this has happened to, and I would hate for that to ruin my trip. As nice as they are, if I were to get hurt, if somebody started following me, if I got separated from them, what lengths would they really go to make sure I was safe? There's also a misconception that only females need to be aware when they're getting drunk, but that's really not the case. Males are just as easily targeted as females are. It's incredibly common for males to be robbed and pickpocketed while they're drunk. If you are going to go out, always keep an eye on your drinks. Don't get too drunk, and just exercise high levels of caution. I know this isn't the funnest rule, but it's what I do to stay safe. Again, I am not telling you what to do, I am just sharing what I do to stay safe while I am traveling. These are just my thoughts. I know that partying is a big part of solo travel and backpacker culture, so if you do go out, just exercise caution. I know that most people do choose to do it. Whether partying at night or just walking around in the middle of the day, try to dress appropriately. In many places, this means crop tops and high-waisted shirts are fine, but not always. In some locations, you may stick out a lot if you wear revealing clothing. I always try my best not to draw attention, which does include what I wear. This also goes for jewelry. I never travel with my engagement ring, although to be honest, it's so I don't lose it or break it, but I really try not to flash expensive items. This is hard as a content creator, but as I mentioned before, I try to keep my equipment in my backpack and only bring it out for a few minutes at a time. This also goes for your phone. I did get followed one time because I had my phone out. I made the mistake of checking my phone for directions as I was walking. Instead, you should stop somewhere safe, check your phone, put it away, then continue walking. Avoid looking lost or confused, even if you are panicking inside. Walk with confidence and look like you are on a mission, or else you're going to be making yourself a target. While walking around, always stay very alert, even during the day. I was followed midday. Know how close people are to you, if anyone is following you, how long someone has been walking behind you, etc. I also recommend always knowing what number to call in case of an emergency. Having the local police number as well as the embassy for your home country. I like to have these numbers saved in my phone so I can quickly call if I need to. I hope you enjoyed these solo travel tips. This is in no way an all-inclusive guide, but I do hope that it helped you with your research. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below and I will respond to you as best as I can. If you have any advice of your own, please share in the comments so that everybody can travel safer and smarter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next adventure.